Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button. We're going to continue our original beat formula series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com. And today I'm going to show you how to make a Dr. Dre style beat in FL Studio using nothing but stock sounds. Let's hop straight into FL Studio. Now, the only stock sound we're not going to use technically is the drum sound, but we're going to stick with stock plugins here, I should say. Okay, so firstly, we need a drum break to chop up. You guys will get the project files for free, so don't try to memorize every single step here. So we need a drum break to chop up. A good collection is Tammuz. He has really good drums. You have Beat Butcher. He makes really good stuff. Alchemist has a kit. Cooking Soul. And who else has dope breaks? AJ Hall has some dope breaks as well. All right, so let's start here at the top. Let's go to drum loops, and we're going to go to breaks. Now, the reason we use drum loops is because they have more texture than one shots. They're more realistic. Okay, so let's just pull. And we don't need the hardest drums in the world, especially for Dre. Now, if you listen to Dre, his kicks are a little more elongated because most of his tracks aren't bass focused. If you listen to his top records of all time, there's like barely any bass guitar. So we're gonna use the kick. We're gonna use the kick as the bass. That's why it's called the bass drum. Okay. So I like these drums. It feels very funkish. Let's right click. Let's open this up in Slice. Now we're doing this in Slice because what it will do is auto chop it for us. Click this button here if it didn't auto chop, this little auto slice button. You could also right click here and go to medium auto slicing. So now it should detect what are called transients, or the pointy parts of the audio. Again, if you ever get confused and I'm moving too fast, no worries. You guys will get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. We also have a free FL Studio course. So if you're just getting into FL, go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. Okay, so I don't want to overwhelm you guys with words. Okay, so basically right click here, go to medium auto slicing. This will slice it by the transient. Transients are the pointy parts of the audio. Okay, so now I can play my MIDI controller, for example, or you could use your typing keyboard, which is this icon right here. You could right click here, just hit reset, and you could use your typing keyboard, starting at the comma for middle C. And that's how you can trigger these pads. So the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want to treat it as if I'm sampling into an MPC. Now I'm going to show you guys an extra step that will give you that authentic 90s sound. Let's go here where it says volume envelope, and we're going to create an envelope for the articulator group 1. In short, what this means is this is an envelope that controls all of the chops. So if I turn this on, the volume, we can manipulate the volume in a way. So let's pull up what's called the sustain here, and we're going to right click and create a fade. Now here's before. Actually, it might do it by default. Okay, it does it by default. But basically, what we're creating is a truncation to the sound. So instead of playing the entire sample, I can play a short note. I think it does it by default anyway. And it will play just that amount of time of the sample, which makes a huge difference when you program your drums. Okay, so first step, we are going to record some hi-hats. Let's go to a lower BPM, like 93, somewhere around there. I like to right click and switch out my tempo sound sometimes. I think the pulse is more accurate of time, whereas the tick, which I used to use, seems a little delayed. So I'm going to use the pulse from now on. And just got to find the hi-hat chops. See how they have different sounds? This is why we use drum breaks, is because the hi-hats don't sound the same. This and this sound completely different, even though it's the tail end of a snare. Now these are a dramatic volume difference, so. Okay, we're gonna use these two and just kind of alternate because there are small differences, and that's what creates a realistic sound. So let's record this to the metronome. If you want to get fancy, you can go off the grid to like 93.5, 93.4. The reason we're doing that is because on old drum machines, they weren't perfectly quantized. So you would get this kind of off-tempo sound. So let's do 93.5 BPM. I'm also going to show you a really advanced technique, which is how to import MPC quantize into FL Studio. So I know it's a lot to take in, but I'll show you guys how to do that. So let's record to the metronome. So we have the metronome turned on. Let's hit record. We're going to go to song mode and record like 16 bars of just hi-hats. And if I mess up, I mess up. And I'll show you guys how I would handle that. Now, for beginners, you may ask, why did I do 16 bars? It's because for more realistic sound, like back in the day, they would record longer. Even Jay Dilla would record longer takes to create more variations over time. And again, it makes it feel more real, because if everything's just like the same way through, it doesn't have any changes, and the ear gets so used to it. It's more of a modern sound, is that quantized, steady velocity sound. Now let's find our kick. All right, so I'm going to try to record the kick and the snare with the open hi-hat over top of that kick. Now, if you want to Dre like typical old school sound, it's kick, kick, snare. Like that. So you guys can do it that way. Let's record it that way instead of using that open hi-hat. I'll show you guys a different way to get that open hi-hat. All right, now I'll also show you guys how to swap out the kick. So let's say that kick isn't giving you enough character. We can always find a different drum break. I'll show you guys how to rearrange it to fit what we just did. So notice too, I didn't record to the metronome. I recorded to the actual hi-hat. So I'm treating the hi-hat as if it were the metronome. So I'm not going to quantize just yet, but we do need a little swing. So I'm not going to go to the channel rack and turn up the swing here. We're actually going to use what's called MPC quantization. You have to download this. Let me show you guys where I found it. All right, so there's a post on Reddit in the Making Hip Hop section from 12 years ago, and it says MPC 60 swing groove templates for FL Studio, unzip and quantize folder, and you're all set. So basically you download this folder, and I'll show you guys how to install it into FL. Once you have the file downloaded, I've put it into its own folder on the computer. So this is the file that you download. It's a zip folder, and we need to find where the FL Studio score files are hosted, or held, I should say. Let's double click in here into our piano roll. Now this is a very advanced concept, so as a beginner, don't try to comprehend what I'm doing here. Just follow these steps. Let's hit Alt Q. We're going to quantize. Now up here, most people don't realize these are quantized templates that you can load. And I show people how to do this in different videos. Let's set the groove template here by going to open. Now to find the folder, I'm on a Mac, so you click this drop down and it tells you the whole chain of folders. So we have to find under our applications folder, there's FL Studio, and then there's contents, and then there's a resources folder, and then there's FL Studio, then there's data. So instead of going through all this, what I like to do is just right click and show in Finder. This will open up the actual location. And usually, you'll see other scores here. So let's go back up a couple. Okay, so let's go up to where it says scores. So again, this is the folder chain. It's underneath applications on the Mac. You go to FL Studio, you right click, show content packages or whatever. So let me try to show people how to get there. I know it's a little convoluted. So basically on FL Studio 4, you right click, you show package contents, and then go to contents. And I believe this is where they host their resources folder. Yeah, so under resources, then we can go to, we're just going to follow this chain here. Then we go to where it says FL. And then we go to the next thing, which is data. And then patches. And then here we could find the scores folder. Now, again, I'm on a Mac, so that's how you do it on Mac. I guess PC might be a little more straightforward. And then now we're in the scores folder. So what we need to do is find our download that we just had and drag and drop it into this scores folder. All right, so now we have the download. We're going to drag it over to the scores folder. And here we need to, I would recommend you guys create your own folder, or you could just double click, but basically just double click the zip folder and it will unzip into its own folder called MPC 60 Quantize. Let's just rename this so we know what this is. All right, so once you double click this to open it, it will create its own folder with these fruity scores. So these are basically converted from MIDI files. You don't need to memorize that. Okay, so anyhow, Now that we know where they are, they're permanently installed in FL Studio, so we don't have to do that ever again. But if you ever come across other quantized templates, that's how you would store them. Anyway, now that you guys have all those steps, I know that was very advanced. So as a beginner, don't try to memorize that. Just follow the steps and just, move on. Okay, so on the MPC 50, let's go to quantize. And now we can turn the sensitivity up to match that of the MPC. It's a little hard to show you guys because I can't zoom while we're doing this. So let me try to zoom in as close as we can. So look at the notes here and look at how they shift when I turn up the start time quantize. So you guys should see movements in the notes here. So what it's doing, FL is pulling the notes closer to those red lines. Okay, so this represents the swing from the MPC. And that's the default. Let's load up the, let's go back. Let's load up some MPC templates. There we go. Now we're on the MPC template. It has a much better swing in my opinion than that default. So let me just compare it to the default like we had before. Even this one's pretty good. 16 backing 1 sounds pretty dope. But here's the default. It feels very stiff. It's like boom, boom, boom. It doesn't have any soul to it, so that's why I recommend you guys load up these MPC quantized settings. And now you hear that delay. It's that second kick, that third kick, 1. Right there, that gap, that's the MPC swing, and that's the vibe. So that's how you get better drums, in my opinion. Most people think people don't quantize. They do quantize. It's just that they do it to a different quantize than what we have in our DAW. So you have to basically install this quantize into your DAW. You could do the same thing in Logic Pro. You just have to use MIDI files. You can find those at Gold Baby, I think it's called. If I remember, I'll leave a link below. So now the hi-hats are quantized and the kick. So now they feel more cohesive as opposed to just like random playing style. Now that is 99% of the job here. Let's hit Control L. Now one thing, let's say the kick isn't big enough for a Dr. Dre sound. So we want the character of the kick that we want is a kick that's more rounded and less high frequency because we can push the kick a little bit harder to sound more boomy. So let's see if we can find another drum break where the kick is a little more low end based, and we want a kick that's, a kick that has a body to it, not just like doom, like a fast kick. So if we can't find one, we're not gonna obsess, but let's see if we can find a different loop here. Now it's hard for people to comprehend because when you go through drum breaks, you're probably expecting the drums to hit hard straight out the browser. But what you don't realize is you want your drums to be as raw as possible half the time because then you can process it to get it to sound more gritty. You don't want your drums super processed most of the time, especially for acoustic hip hop. If we can't find anything, then we'll... I like this kick a little bit more. So let's say you wanted to try that. Let's right click, open and slice. And to save time, again, we want to right click here, go to medium auto slicing. But instead of replaying everything, what we could do is just hit Control L, send this to the mixer. And we could hit Control X to clear the MIDI. All we need to do is just copy and paste the patterns. Okay, so we hit Control C, Control V on pattern 3. Let's go to pattern 2 here. Control C, go to an empty pattern, pattern 4, Control V. Now we need to remap the actual hits. So just hit Control to highlight all these. And I believe this is the kick. So just left click and drag to demo. Let's hit Shift down. And then we need to find the snare, which is right here. So now we have the kick and the snare mapped. Let's go to pattern 3 and we need to find 2 hi-hats in the sample. Now this one doesn't seem to have 2 hi-hats, so we're just gonna grab that second hi-hat, hit Shift up. And now we can compare the 2 styles of drums. So let's go to pattern 3 and pattern 4. Okay, so just listen to the texture of the drums, not like anything else. Also hear this like tick, 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 tick. That's part of the sample ending. So these are little details you don't get with one shots. It's almost like a sub rhythm. It's like underneath. Okay, let's listen to the second drum. So I think we could get a lot more aggression out of the second take. I do like the first set of drums for a certain style. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to label these so you guys don't have to worry about this. This is drums 1 hi-hat. This is drums 1 kick and snare. And we will try both to see which one fits the music better. So here's drums 2 hi-hat, and here is drums 2 kick and snare. So this is the work that nobody puts in, but this is, you know, understanding sounds and texture. This is bigger 80s, but it's very bright. And this one, we could push the sound harder. So I like the sound for that reason. Okay, so in this case, we're going to take drum 2 for now. We're going to grab this mute tool and just mute patterns, you know, for the drums 1. And another way we could do this is so much to learn. Just right click, hit G to group. And then now we can kind of tuck these away with this up arrow like that. So now we have more space. Okay, so now on making the drums bigger, now you guys see how much time we spend just getting the drums right. We haven't even talked about instruments. So let's hit Control L again to send these to the mixer and auto name them. Now, the first thing we want to do with drums, you know, I'm going to show you guys only FL Studio stuff today, but normally I would use a plugin called Genome, which models analog gear. And, you know, let me show you what it sounds like first before I teach you the rest, because this does not come with FL Studio. But basically, Genome does not come with these presets either. You have to buy these presets. These presets are called NAM or NAM profiles. They stand for Neural Amp Modeling Profiles. So I only use Genome to host a preset, basically. Okay, so, and the reason we use Genome is because you can load up what are called stereo presets. So this is a very advanced concept. I just want to show you guys what the real thing sounds like so that you're not chasing the wind. So anyhow, I bought these presets from Analog X, and we're going to use the Analog for Life. He has my favorite ones called the 4K console, which I believe is the SSL console, which Dr. Dre is known for using. Okay, so basically you're going to run the drums through this, and we're going to push what's called the input gain up to give it more aggression. And to match the level or the volume, we're going to pull down the volume. So I'm basically going to pull the volume down, output volume first, and then push the input volume. Now the drums are going to gain a character, a fullness that you can't get from just turning up the volume. Hear that crunch? So I'm going through different presets here. Here's the Dr. Dre one, super pushed. Hear how smashed that kick sounds? Here's before. Here's after. Much bigger, okay? So what it's doing is adding saturation. Now, you cannot get that sound in the same way in FL Studio, but I wanted to show you what it sounds like so that you have a reference as to where I'm trying to go with the sound. Okay, so you have to do a lot of work here. So firstly, in FL Studio, the first step I would normally do is add a Fruity Wave Shaper, and then I'm going to push this into what's called a Fruity Soft Clipper. So there's no like turn it and leave it here. You have to work with these as you turn knobs. So the first place we're going to work with is turning the Fruity Soft Clipper threshold all the way to the left. This creates more of a powdery, compressed sound, but we're going to try different versions here. We're going to go to the Fruity Wave Shaper, click this gear icon, and we're going to turn this up to 4x oversampling. And we want to give it a slight convex curvature. You guys probably can't even see the curvature because it's so small, but basically we're left clicking and dragging it this way, but at a very, 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 very small amount because we don't want to overly do it. And what we're going to do is pull the pre-level up. So this is the volume going in, the input volume. And now it's just getting louder, so we don't want to just make stuff louder. We want to just turn this post level down. Now, if we want more crunch, we could left click this curvature and create more saturation. But the problem is now it sounds very boxy. It just sounds boxy. So what we could do is pull back the mix level. So it's a fine line of like how much do we push to get that aggression, but we still want to avoid that boxiness. So I'm just going to keep messing with this curvature and the mix level here to get different levels of the tone. Now let's go back to Fruity Soft Clipper and try switching the threshold type. So threshold to the right makes the sound feel very open. Threshold to the left gives it more tone and more compression. Can't really tell here because I'm not pushing the volume super heavy. So let's push the post level into Fruity Soft Clipper and then turn the post level from there down. So to the left sounds very boxy. So we're going to keep the threshold to the right. And just monitor that post level. So that is, that requires a lot of multi-steps. So it's, you guys will get the project files for free, so you don't have to memorize that. So let's A/B. So here's before. Just listen to how thinned out the drum sound. Here's after. Okay, a lot more density to the track. Now in Genome, let's compare it to Genome just to show you guys the ultimate sound. Way more crunchy. And it seems a little bit darker in terms of tone. Okay, so it has a much more sharp transient. Let's turn up the post. So this is missing just a little more density. If anything, I could just mess with this curvature a little bit more. But for now, we're just going to leave it as is. We don't want to overly obsess about this. So again, as a beginner, that's going to take a while to learn. That's not something you just learn today and just know it for life type of thing. So don't worry about that. Let's go to the channel rack here. Let's click this plus icon. Let's go to where it says flex. We're going to open up 3 of these. The first preset we're going to go to is go to the store tab, and you want to download what are called the essential packs. So look for the essential guitars, pianos, and strings, and the other one, the winds and bass. Okay, so here we have the essential packs downloaded. These are free. Let's go to the essential guitars, scroll down and look for where it says muted Strat 2. Load this up. I like to take off the effects, the reverb, the delay, even the limiter, and I turn off the distance in this case. Now we have a muted guitar. Okay, and let's go to another flex here, and let's load up the essential strings, all string staccato. So this is your like big Scott Storch type drums. Now it's usually a lower string more than it is the higher strings. And then we have nextly another flex. Let's go to essential strings. Let's go to cellos. This is your lower, think of it like a low pitched violin. Now Dre, again, when you listen to his top records, I'm talking about his top billion played records, you'll find it doesn't have a huge bass line. And this shocked me. I'm like, wait, Dre doesn't even have bass lines like that. It's like just the kick is the main thing. Now, one more thing I want to try here on this. So I do like the drums. I think it just needs a little more transient. We're getting very advanced here. Okay, so the next step is just, for people who want to take it this far. Now, FL has a transient processor. Let's start there first before I get into the complex ones. Let's just turn up the attack time. So this just adds a little more like, you could feel the groove of the drums. Like you start feeling the fallingness of the drum. Feels like you're falling into the beat. So that works for now, but I was going to show you guys a more complex way to do it. Now, one more plugin let's try for tone is the Fruity Limiter. Fruity Limiter. Now, this is slept on. But if you guys go to either limiter or compress mode, it doesn't matter. Let's go to limiter mode for now. Let's pull back the saturation knob. And we can add more crunch. And then we're going to turn up what's called the gain. And this is adding that final like dusty crunch to the drum. Now I might add the limiter before the transient processor. There we go. Because my goal is not to take away the transients or the pointy parts, because you need the pointy parts in order to feel the beat, like you're feeling like you're moving in the beat. If you chop off too much of the transient parts, the beat feels very stiff and it doesn't feel like you're moving with the beat, like bobbing your head. So we got pretty close. So I would say we're pretty close. So here's the genome. Forgive the clicks, it's only because my buffer length is so low. Now this seems like it has a lower sample rate. It just has that snare is just super. So again, if I wanted to be particular, the last thing I would do on this is shape the tone. We're getting very, very, very in the weeds, but I'm showing you guys how much work it takes to get the perfect tone here. This is very advanced. Don't think this is for beginners. Open up Fruity Delay 3, turn the dry level down, turn the feedback level down, turn the delay time all the way down. Everything else becomes in effect. We can lower what's called the sample rate here. But the thing is, this will add a ring sound. So to prevent that, we're going to add the low pass filter. So we are getting rid of high frequencies, but that's common in more like tape. So we don't want to cut too much out. But the reason we're using the sample rate reduction is to get rid of some of the detail on the high end. And here's another filter if you guys want to shift some of the tone, but we're not going to mess with that. So here's before, very bright. Here's after. This has a little more character. It could use a little more bump in the low end. I'm getting really particular here, but let's add a parametric EQ2 and just add a low shelf, it's called, and just boost this up a little bit on the lows. Just a little bit. So it has more of a feel to it. We'll probably undo that decision later. But now the drums. So here's before. They sound thin, right? Now here's after. All right, so now the drums have a whole different vibe to them. All right, so that is most of the work that you have to do, and that's the work that the mixing engineer usually does, but it makes the producer seem like they know everything, like they know what they're doing all the time, and that's not always the case. Sometimes that's the mixing engineer doing that. Anyhow, let's hit Control L in the channel rack, send these to the mixer, and now we need the main sound, the main melodic guiding tone. So let's go to our playlist here and let's start mapping out purposes for our song. So the drum is the rhythm section. And then we have three other sections. We have the top line. This is your memorable melody. The harmony is your chords of the track, usually the glue to the track. Now for Dre, you're not going to play chords straight out. I'll show you guys how to play. And then we have the contrast layer. This would be your cello, your bass line. Now again, and I think it's still Dre, if I'm not mistaken. Boom, sitting in the corners on them low girls still. Okay, so if you listen to that track, there's like no bass line. It's all just like, there's no bass line. So let's add a guitar. Now, I don't want to copy, but that's kind of like the vibe. Now, the thing about his muted guitar is that it wasn't a perfect mute. It was like, it's like when you mess up on the guitar, it makes this like distorted kind of mute. This is a perfect mute to where it's just like perfectly taken. This is why certain articulations that you have in these samplers isn't the right sound. So you're not, no matter how hard you try, it's not going to sound like Dre, because Dre's muted guitar has a flaw in it. This one's a perfect sample, so it's not going to sound the same. But let's record this in. All right, so I recorded all the way through, again, to have that same type of vibe. Now, if you feel like your muted guitar is too like loose, then you could use that quantize technique, which is to quantize to the MPC timing so that it fits in the groove of the drum and you're not trying to make two things. Now, this is too quantized, so we need a little time difference. So I'm going to undo that by hitting Control Z. Now, to give it a little flaw, what I'm going to do is go to the mixer here and look for mixer channel 3. If you don't see these numbers on the left side, hit Alt M on your keyboard. In the mixer here, we have the guitar. And to create like flaw to the ear, I'm going to create difference. So let's go to slot 1 here. Let's add Fruity Stereo Enhancer. Let's turn up the time offset. So now it has a flaw to it, like a quote unquote flaw, which is a timing flaw, because the sample was too perfect. We need to do something to make it sound some type of human. And again, I'm not trying to recreate Still Dre, just showing you guys techniques. So now we have, that will be the top line. Okay, the top line is very simple. It's 2 notes, dun, 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 and it repeats. The harmony is the glue. So this is, you know, without teaching you guys everything about music theory, the harmony is just usually a triad chord. So if A is my top note, D is most likely the root note. This is getting a little convoluted. I can feel it. So A is the top note. Basically, to figure out the root note, because we're listening to the top note, usually is the top note of a chord. And then you have to figure out the bottom notes of a chord. The way I do that is I just pick the top note and skip scale degrees going down the keyboard. That sounds convoluted. So this is probably the chord DFA, which is D minor. Now the tricky part is for Still Dre, the chords do not play throughout the entire track. They actually play towards the end of something. I'm not gonna copy Still Dre. So what I'll do is I'll play a chord in the beginning, and then when that note switches, then we'll play it at the beginning, and then when it switches. So that, and then maybe something at the ending. See how it's like beginning, ending. Now we have to create some kind of change up somewhere. Let's create a change up here. I hit the wrong note, of course. I meant to do. That's too musically rich anyway. So at the end here, I wanted the chords to change. My bad, y'all. That was my mistake. Let's run that back. So notice I'm not playing the chords like this. Also, too, for this sound here, we want to make sure we have some release, because right now it's very stiff sounding. So you have to turn up this release under the volume envelope, or else it sounds very stiff. Like when you let go of a key, it just stops out of nowhere. Okay. So real strings have a little bit of that release tail. Now let's add a contrast layer. Now again, in this song, the bass line is not. So let's just add the root notes basically. D and C, those are the two melody notes. It's gonna add these throughout the chords. So this is more towards the end. I still have to add an open hi-hat. Okay, so the contrast layer's job is to play in contrast to the top line. So if the top line's moving fast, the contrast layer moves slow. If the if the top line layer plays on the downbeat, the contrast layer might play on the syncopated beats, which is the ands. So 1 and 2 and. So these are just small little things to add to your beat. So one thing we need to see if we can add here, I don't know if this has it in here. So this drum break does not have an open hi-hat, so we actually need to refer back to drum break number 1 in order to add this open hi-hat that we actually need. So I'm going to go to a new pattern here and just left click to drag to a new pattern. We need to find where that open hi-hat. So here's an open hi-hat. Okay, so this is the only sample in this that has an open hi-hat, but the problem is we have a kick underneath. So to solve this, we're going to double click on marker 3 and we need to go to where it says filter and switch this to filter articulator 2 or group 2. We're going to go to a high pass filter HP and then you have to turn it on by hitting ×1, turn the resonance down. And basically I'm going to sweep with the cutoff filter until we get rid of the kick. So you don't need to sweep very far. So now we have that open hi-hat separated from the kick and it won't affect the other samples. Now we can record this in. So it's going to go. So it's just going to go on the syncopated beats, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I played it all the way through just for different note lengths. And now we can hit Alt Q and we want to quantize that to the MPC 50% setting. Now we can just turn this down. It's a little loud. Now is it the perfect open hi-hat for this beat? Not necessarily. But we want to process this drum through the drums. Now here's again where we're getting a little advanced. So if you get confused on this next step, no worries. If you guys remember here, drum break number 1 goes to mixer channel 1. The second drums we had goes to mixer channel 2. What we can do in Slice X is reroute what's called the output. So instead of marker 3 going to output number 1, we could tell it to go to +1 of wherever it is. So let's go to +1 as the output. And this will be 1 + 1 is 2. So now that open hi-hat will be processed the same way as the rest of our drums. So we'll fit the texture a little bit better. And now we can just turn this down. Now again, to not affect the rest of the drums because this channel volume is affecting the entire drum. So instead of doing that, we could just turn down the amp volume here with the second amp knob here. It tells you in the top left this value. So the first one is the panning, second one is the volume. So again, we're on marker 3, so we're not affecting any other chops. So if we ever come back to the other drums, they won't be turned down in this case. So now I'm just going to turn this down. And now it feels more cohesive with the other drums. Because we quantized the open hi-hat, but we also too processed in the same way, so it feels like it's from the same machine. Let's see if we can take away some of the high frequencies on the guitar. It's a little too... I'm also gonna add a little release, so it's not so like stiff sounding. Now here's where we can be more creative. This is not me following the template of Still Dre at this point. Now we're gonna just get into the stuff that we musically hear in our head, if anything. Okay, so the way I think about this is if we want to add stuff, I'm going to create 4 more layers here. We're going to create what's called the top line expression layer, the harmony expression layer, the contrast expression. So you may ask, what is an expression? Expression is a playing style. So instead of me talking like this, I could be talking like this. That is very theatric and expressive. Okay, so that's what I mean. So we can do the same thing with our instruments here. So instead of just playing notes, we could have them perform. That could be a pitch bend. That could be, a hi-hat roll. It could be a kick drum fill. It could be, what else? It could be a bass line slide. It could be a lot of things. So I'm just going to use my brain here, my own, just working in FL Studio to add more stuff. Let's start with organic sounds first. Let's go to Flex here. And maybe the one thing we could add is a flute. So let's go to Woodwinds. Let's try out the flute sustain. Again, my thing is to turn off these effects and just kind of start here. Let's hit Control L. I think there's another guitar that goes. So I think that's a synth though. So if you listen closely, I'm doing what's called a pitch bend with my MIDI controller. There is a way to emulate this in a way in the piano roll, but this only works for image line plugins. But I'm going to record this in as a top line expression here. So let's record this. We're on a new pattern here. You guys will get all the project files. I know I'm working a little bit quicker here. So here I'm playing D and A, which is a fifth, because we played D, F, A as the first chord. That's all we need. All I'm doing is just playing that simple chord, DFA, which is D minor. So I just played the chord. So really that's a top line expression and partially a harmony expression, but the notes are coming from the chord, which is D minor, D, F, and A. We're just playing them spread out. Okay, so now we can layer these things, these top line expressions, these harmony expressions. I'll just do it for you guys so that we're not overly explaining stuff. But once I get into pitch bending, I usually use a synthesizer. For a good synthesizer on the West Coast sound, Sawyer is very good, as well as the Morphine plugin, as well as, what else is good for? I know I'm missing one here, but let's start with Sawyer. Let's go to presets. Let's go to keys. I like their leads. Their leads are really good for bass lines, but this is in G-Funk, so we're not going to mess with that. But let me just show you what it sounds like. If you go to the leads and play really low notes, and then click on the image line tab, you have the effects. Just turn off delay. You get this type of bass. Like, it's really good for West Coast, but for this type of beat, we're not doing G-Funk. Let's look for more keys. I don't know their keys very well, but let's just go through some patches. add this as like a pitch bend. I like this tone, I just don't like the chord that they have on it. See how that like little additional little chord thing. So pardon me, I can't speak today. This is why I call this expression layer, because you're just adding little, and this could be your I don't know the notes off the top of my head. It's just a weird thing to play, so let me try to add that in. That's too hard and weird to play to my brain, so I'm not going to add that in. But you could add that in. Let's just do... It's a little synthetic. So I might have to tuck that in the mix because that one's a little synthetic. It's pulling us away from the realism of the other sounds. I can also hear in my head like dunka, 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 dunka. Let's see if we can find some kind of muted bass guitar. We may or may not find the sound. I don't think they have any muted bass. Let's see. I need something that's just like chukka chukka chunka chunka chukka like that. See if I can create a muted by pulling. So this little like background stuff. Again, the real song does not have a bass like this, but I'm adding it in. So just little stuff like that. Let's take away some of that muted guitar. Like the muted guitar is a little too early. Let's go to the wrench tool here, turn up what's called time shift just by a little bit. Let's see what kind of other synths we can add. Let's try adding a lead in here somewhere. Remember, these are all additional ideas. You don't need these ideas. I think I'm gonna add that in. Pretty cool sound. So now we're getting into the G-Funk realm, and this is why I'm adding this in as an additional area. This is not trying to mimic Still Dre. So that requires a lot of pitch bending, and that's why you need a MIDI controller most of the time for these type of genres. Let's see what else we can add. I hear more chords we can add in here. Let's go to Flex and let's add a grand piano. Let's go to Essential Pianos and let's go to Yamaha C7. You could also use the Steinway D piano. So now let's just like play the chords in different octaves. So I'm just kind of strumming the chord, picking the chords there. Strumming the chords, I should say. Let's record this in. Last note, I hit the wrong note. All right, so we can tuck this in the mix. So now we're just, you know, depending on what you guys add, this could be considered overly adding stuff. But again, when you get into the expression layers, there's no rules for these. It's just the number one rule is to not clash with the main layers. Okay, so this is why expression layers are so important, because they also help when you guys go to range. You have more puzzle pieces to add to your track. So let's rearrange these into the proper category. So we have the contrast, we have two top line expression layers, we have two harmony expression layers, and then we have a contrast. So we don't have any rhythm expression layers. Technically the bass is a rhythm, so I mean, this is doubles as a contrast and a rhythm. Again, we did this all with stock plugins. Let's start mixing, because now I think we have enough puzzle pieces. If I were to arrange this, okay, now we have enough stuff to take away from the mix. So let's just copy all this, hit Control, highlight this, hit Shift, left click, drag to the right there. And we're gonna bring it back into the main. And then at the end here, we're gonna add that contrast expression layer because it adds a nice rhythm without doing too much. This is a very subconscious rhythm. And it's kind of revving up the energy. And now here we could take out the main top line because we have a very strong lead, like a lead actor. And now we can get rid of that top line. And basically we could duplicate this and then add that top line back and maybe remove the lead sound, or we can keep it in. And this is where the hook will come in. Steel, busting the beat. And I still got love for the drip. Some might say the lead and the piano is just too much, so I would take out the piano on that. I took out the flute as well, because again, we have two top line expressions trying to play. And the harmony was so high of a note, it could be perceived as a top line. So these are basically in the same subcategory, but technically this is a harmony. So that's why you could remove these two and it still carries the song. That's why categories are so important. Now again, that let's see if we can get a more realistic guitar sound. Again, this is out of our control technically, but let's just go to different samples to try to get a better fitting. Again, these are very clean. So a real, like, again, I don't want to keep saying the same thing. I think this one with a little filtering might. This one's called Diddy Wah. Let's see what this sounds like. Heck no, never mind. Just wanted to try it. This one has a weird like phase to it though. It just sounds like it's in a room. So let's just stick with the original. Again, the reason it just doesn't have that full Dre thing is because again, it's too perfect of a sound. Last thing we could do is maybe truncate the note. Sounds closer. Because we're not getting so much tone. So I'm going to use that time shift just to delay these notes just a little bit behind the beat. I feel like they sound better with the time delay. Let's go all the way back. All right, so now it's about mixing. So we've mixed everything to where it should be technically because we focused on those drums. Now let's create a new channel in here called the beat mix. We're going to hit control, highlight all of these channels and right click and route to this track only. That's one way to do it. Or if you have stuff set up to a reverb already, you just have to left click the master output and just left click and send it to the beat mix. That won't mess up any reverb sends that you guys have. If you don't know what that even means, no worries. Just copy these steps, right click, hit control, highlight these, right click the up arrow, go to route to this track only. And now we can mix everything in what's called the beat mix. So here's where we get the final tonality out of sounds. We don't really need to address individual sounds. There's not much to mix about them. If anything, we could widen out the cello. So if you don't see this little knot that I just twisted, click here where it says view extra volume and stereo properties. Click there. Now you'll see this little knob here. If you don't see it, make your mixer bigger because sometimes they'll hide it depending on the size of your mixer. And turn this to the left to make it wider. So for the cello, just making it a little more full. We can do the same thing with the chords. now it's a little more full. Let's see if we can do the same thing with the mute. I think the mute's mono, I can't tell. Can't remember if I quantized the open hi-hat, so I'm just going back to do that here. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is go to the subchannels. So let's hit Control, highlight all these subchannels, and just turn these down. So I'm going -9 dB. It's usually where I start, and then I go to the beat mix, add the parametric EQ2. I'm reading the values in the top left, by the way, and then turn this up 9 dB. This will help me create more dynamic in the track. Nextly, for this type of track, we need more. It doesn't really need more aggression, but let's just add a final touch of aggression here. We could run the Fruity Wave Shaper. Normally, though, I just run stuff through the Fruity Soft Clipper, but in order for this to really smack, you have to run volume into it. And the way you do that is with the first parametric EQ2, but you got to be careful here because you got to balance the input volume with the output volume. And for a beginner, you're not going to understand what that means. So I'll just show you what that means here. We're going to crank this input off of the EQ2. Turn the, where it says main level, we're going to go past the 9 dB that we had, and then we're going to crank it higher. But we have to make sure that we're not just making everything loud. So we have to go to Fruity Soft Clipper and turn the post level down. So we're compensating. So a good way to do this is turn the post level down first. Go back to parametric EQ2, and now we can push the volume. So now the track's going to feel more dense. Now we could use the Fruity Soft Clipper, the threshold, to try out different styles of threshold soft clipping. To the left, it just destroys the signal. To square it off. To the right, it feels very open. Kind of like it at like 90%. Now we need to turn the post level back up. So just those two plugins. Here's before. Technically, this is not a fair comparison because we need 9 dB. So let's turn Soft Clipper off, copy this value, and then set it to 9. So here is technically before this 2 plugin chain. All right, so that's before. Now let's do the after here. So it sacrificed a little bit of low end for more high end density, in my opinion. Okay, so now that we have those two, that pretty much is the identity of the track. And now we're just working on little things like tone or the width of the track, which we can, there is no good plugin, in my opinion, for stereo imaging and FL Studio stock plugins, but we could widen the track technically with this stereo separation knob, which is part of like the Dre sound, is this type of stereo delay. And now instead of an up and down, we have a left to right dynamic. So it's like going like this instead of just like this. Okay, so now we have multi-directional. I actually like this sound. It's a wide sound like this. It creates a nice separation of the sounds. And we could probably pull the strings back a little bit more. So I like that exaggerated stereo delay. Okay, so here we could, pull up an EQ to shape the tone. I don't think we really need to do much of anything, if anything. What we could do though, because we don't have a bass, let's pull up around 60 hertz or 75 hertz. Those are my two favorite frequencies. Or just given the frequency, given the song, the frequencies we need, pardon me, to shake the car, which is 75 hertz and 60 hertz. So I like 75, let's try 60 hertz. Boost in there. '60 resonates better with me, so let's add 60 hertz. So we're boosting 3 dB at 60. Just add that final knock to the track. And what else is there to do but add a limiter here? So let's add a fruity limiter. Some people swear by Maximus, but I think Maximus adds like a film over the sound. It adds like this weird film sound, probably because it's multi-band. So now we're going to, actually, I'm trying to debate which step I want to do this in. So first, let's just start with saturation first. Now, keep in mind, we've already saturated the sound, so doing it for the third time here is going to add more harmonics, but it's also going to make it potentially collapse the sound. So you got to be careful doing too much saturation. But let's exaggerate it. Let's turn up the gain. And now you hear that ripping sound. It's like, vroom, vroom, vroom. Now it's ripping the sound. I like the sound. Let's just pull it back a little bit. So now we get that real final aggressive touch. But it doesn't sound like a squared off EDM square. It sounds like a dusty aggression. So again, just to remind you guys, here's before. Actually, technically, this is not. Let me be fair in this analysis. So before is technically going to be this. So here is technically before. Let me do something so we can A/B faster. I'm just going to duplicate this. But for you guys using this project, do not use two of these back to back. This will destroy your mix. So I hope I remember to delete this so you guys don't accidentally turn that back on. Double the volume. That will blow your speakers, guaranteed. All right, so let's, so here's before. Just boosting everything 9 dB. Technically it's not boosted, but and technically it isn't even before. All right, here's the perfect before. Okay. I'll play it up until the second part here. All right, so that's the before. And now let's turn these plugins on, and here's the after. So I'll delete that first EQ. Can you believe that you could do that with stock plugins in FL Studio, known for the worst stock plugins of all dolls? Okay, we just did it, and you guys will get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio to get these project files for free. If you want to learn FL Studio, we have a course called FL Studio 21 Beginners Course at busyworksbeats.com. Just check the free courses tab and look for our free courses there. But that's the course you want to start with. If you want to move into beat making specifically, go to busyworksbeats.com/better beatmaker. I'll leave all these links below, but that's the course that will guide you through the actual process of becoming a beat maker. Okay. And yeah, so much more, but I'll leave it there. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio to get these project files for free. Peace out, guys. Share with a friend. Peace.